But first, the French, the perfidious French. I have found two things, a tweet and an extraordinary video that would help you to understand something that's bizarre, something weird, that much of the media left is treating like, perfectly normal. It's something that's going to help explain why the French president and his ambassador here are carrying on like pork chops, like the most incredible drama queens abusing Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
You think he lied to you?
I don't think. I know.
Was the president lied to? Misleading and lying. You lied to him. An unprecedented new law. The deceit was intentional, a stab in the back, to turn its back out of this world.
Now, sensible people would say, why all this hyperbole, this drama, this abuse about a contract? Australia had a contract with France to build diesel subs. This contract had a get-out clause if Australia didn't like what we were getting so far. And guess what? We didn't. So Morrison cancelled the deal, as was his right, and went instead for better nuclear subs from the US and Australia. End of story. So why this massive French overreaction, like we'd just blown up the Eiffel Tower? And why are Labor and the media left so wrong to take France's side against our Prime Minister, as if France is acting so reasonably and responsibly instead of almost deranged?
Mr Morrison's character has been on show, and we're seeing the consequences to Australia's interests and international standing as a consequence. I mean, his character is one of somebody, frankly, who's dishonest, someone whose reflex is spin rather than sincerity, always reaches for background and leaking, and someone who's stubbornly refuses to say, yes, we could have handled this better.
Well, Labor's Penny Wong there is either treating you like fools or is foolishly ill-informed herself. No idea why Macron and his ambassador were always going to have hysterics and were always going to act like little Napoleons who just lost Waterloo. Because let me give you some background into something very wild, something that some people on the left would actually say is even sinister that is happening in France. It's the context. Before I show you that email, play that video to show you why Macron is staging this theatrical hissy fit, not for our benefit, but to save his skin in France. France is in trouble. It is so divided. It's had huge terrorist attacks, the worst in Europe, and many riots as well, particularly in Muslim areas. So many immigrants are so poorly assimilated, and many French fear their country has lost not just its old glory, but its unity and even identity. Now, early this year, 20 retired generals signed an open letter to the government warning the hour is late, France is in peril, and many mortal dangers threaten her. Civil war will break upon this growing chaos, and the deaths for which you will be responsible will number among the thousands. That was a warning enough, but it was followed by an open letter, not long after, an open letter to Macron by 2,000 serving soldiers saying, we are talking about the survival of our country, the survival of your country. A civil war is brewing in France and you know it perfectly well. That letter demanding that Macron take action has since been signed by 300,000 people, and Macron now faces a huge political problem because he's got an election next year, and his big opponent in the final runoff for president seemed to be sure Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Front. Now, she's on the right. But it now seems it might not even be her. It could even be a journalist and author of the even more right, Eric Zemmour. He's from an Algerian Jewish family, but boy, can't recall when I last heard a bigger French nationalist firebrand. And you should hear what those two rivals on the right are saying about Australia tearing up this subs deal and going with Britain and the US instead, how they're hanging this around Macron's neck like a dead albatross, making him look weak, a man who cannot be trusted to make France great again. Marine Le Pen mocked Macron for having had to wait an hour and a half to see US President Joe Biden at the G20 meeting last week. And still, she said, Macron obtained nothing from him to compensate for the betrayal of the contract for the submarines. And she said, I will make France get respect by ensuring its independence. But Zemmour, I must do a bigger show on him later on, because watch out for this man. Very smart. He's now second in the polls. Smart and maybe unprincipled. He's now second in the polls behind Macron, and he was even more extreme about this subs deal. He made Macron seem a fool, tricked by those wicked Anglo-Saxons. Britain, the US and Australia tearing up our contract with France's naval group.
Qu'il y a là une catastrophe commerciale qui a des causes liées à la fois à la société Naval Group et à son organisation, mais aussi et surtout à l'incapacité de l'État français d'avoir vu, d'avoir diagnostiqué et d'avoir combattu les menaces. Et nos services secrets auraient dû le savoir et alerter le gouvernement. D'ailleurs, certains murmurent que Emmanuel Macron était en vérité au courant depuis juin dernier et qu'il a attendu le moment le plus favorable pour annoncer cette catastrophe et ce camouflet que nous ont infligé nos alliés anglo-saxons.
So, do you now see why the French president and his hired help at the embassy here are acting so crazy about Anglo-Saxon Australia stabbing France in the back? I know it's irrational, of course it is. But they've got to show these ultra-nationalists back in France that Macron is tough too. French glory. He's got to win these French voters on the right, show that he's right on top of punishing these wicked Anglo-Saxons. Well, Macron is gone. So can we please now be clear about one thing at least, and this is a plea to the media. This French rage, it's not really about Morrison. It's about Macron. This is a desperate man desperately pandering to France's far right. And the left in Australia, the media left and Labor, they're on his side. I mean, that's bizarre.